October 13th, 2020. Having reviewed the agenda, are there any edits or deletions? If not, do I hear a motion to accept the agenda as written?
I move that we accept the agenda as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the agenda stands adopted as written. We'll move on to the town manager communications.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in your packets are the monthly reports from each department head, as well as our communication specialist, and my capstone report. Just a few things I wanted to mention: completed projects. We just want to mention and celebrate something that was a goal that was set during our budget process, that we want Parks, Recreation, and Lake Department to be self-funded. And with the last decisions that council made, that allows that department to do just that. So that's a good thing. That was completed last month. We sent a letter to all commercial boat owners alerting them of the increased rates and guidelines as a follow-up to that. The amphitheater in Morris Park was seeded again. It's been reseeded, so it's green now. If you look at it, it is a little bit yellow. It's telling us there's not a lot of nitrogen in the soil. It is probably some bad soil. So we'll continue to monitor that and try to fertilize as needed. The Labor Day fireworks event was held, and kudos to Regi, Wakecaster, Humphreys, all those who participated to make that event successful. They did another great job. And then the residents received a postcard from the mayor, basically letting them know that it was very important that they complete the 2020 census. It's estimated that each person to the town is worth $18,000 in revenue that comes back to us as we add people to our population. So there are state share revenues. It's very important for us to count every person that we can and then some. And then Lake Patrol schedule was created for reserve officers. So that's been created, and Chief Humphreys is working with his reserve officers to make sure they stay on patrol. And then finance officer submitted the solid waste report to DEQ. Last couple items, the Taylor Gate lighting is now installed. It's been complete after talking about that for years. Lindsay has come aboard and made that happen, so that's good. And then last, just a lot of good meetings last week and some this week. Matter of fact, one today. But I want to mention last week was a meeting that Commissioner Kilby and Commissioner Moore and I had with the policy group, which, as you guys know, they are on retainer to help us begin pursuing revenue through the General Assembly. So I think Mr. Kilby or Mr. Moore, if you have anything you'd like to add to that, and then that will conclude my comments, Madam Mayor.
Shannon, I'll give a little background on the follow up to that meeting at the town hall, not the town hall, but the town meetings that we had at the school, the informational meetings that we had at the school. Walter Dalton and his wife Lucille attended one of those meetings, and Walter and Lucille have a lot of ties to Lake Lure. They had a boat here for years and years, and so they have a lot of interest and ties to Lake Lure. And after the meeting, I spoke with them, and they just had nothing but praise for the job that staff had done in getting the meeting together, and how informative it was, how professional it was, how detailed it was, and how easy to understand from their perspective. So about 10 days probably, or the next week after, I actually received a call from Walter one day, and he wanted to talk a little bit about the meeting and hit some perspectives. And for those of you that may not know, Walter was a state senator for, I think, either 12 or 14 years. And after that, he was the lieutenant governor for one term, I'm sure. I cannot remember if it was 2 terms. So Walter has a lot of contacts besides he's just retiring as the president of ICC, but he just is a wealth of contacts. And so he called me, he initiated the call to just talk about some things that he thought about after coming to that meeting. And one of the things that he mentioned in what he was talking to me about was what he felt was the importance of us as a town and as the commissioners and town staff involving the county in this project if we possibly can. And his perspective was that from a financial standpoint, he wasn't sure how much money we would get out of them, but he did feel like they had influence. He felt like they had influence at the legislative level because of our local David Rogers, who's here in the county. He also felt that the county could be an asset to the town in possibly being a financial backer, maybe not providing money, but co-signing or what in some way being a part to help us in loans or grants, things like that we might be able to secure. And so he has a great relationship with the policy group, with Steve and John, and Steve Metcalf and John Metcalf. And so he had a lot of good ideas from that standpoint. And so that was the reason that I came to Shannon and to you, Shannon, and brought up the things that Walter had said. And so I just think it's a great opportunity for us to have some close connections to people that will be able to influence people in the right places. The other thing, my thinking through that whole thing, and I'm sure I've said this to most everybody over the months, is that I'm still not sure that the county understands the economic impact that Lake Lure and the Hickory Nut Gorge has on the county as a whole. And I just think that's one of the really important things that we put together. Come up with the facts, evidence, and logic as best we can so we can present to the county leadership, the importance of our area and the disaster that would be if something happened to this lake, if something catastrophic happened, how it would affect tourism, how it would affect property taxes and property values and all those things. And I just think it's a key that we, in some way, do the best job we can to make the county become a part of it. If it's just from a backing up, helping make contacts. So that's probably a lot more than you wanted to hear, but that was the whole background from that conversation.
I would say, just to add to this, add to that, Madam Mayor, is that Steve Metcalf has worked with Steve Garrison, county manager, for a number of years. He's known him for a long time. And also he's worked closely with Scott Datson, whom you know, and is the director of the Isothermal Planning Development Commission. And so he was going to reach out to those chief appointed officials in their respective organizations and just start a conversation and then try to gather some information for us and come back and maybe make some suggestions about how we can continue to work with them. I think one of the neat things that came out of that meeting, that discussion, it's something that we are finally beginning to distill from our internal conversations. It's about equity retention. It's about wealth retention. And catastrophe in this town is not only has a negative impact on those who live here and pay taxes, it also has a negative impact on this entire county because we're such a large part of the tax base, the sales tax that's generated, the tourism development authority, their revenue, the accommodation sales tax comes from lion's share of that comes from this end of the county. So it's really about economic impact, and it's about wealth and equity retention, and us to be able to finally create the message that we could give to the policy group in a one-page summary. We can flesh this out in 10 pages or 12 pages, but when they're talking to members of the General Assembly and the folks that they tend to try to facilitate goodwill in towards our direction, it really needs to be a one-page summary, no more than 5 or 6 points that get down to the heart of the matter so that they can quickly talk with folks and move on and try to facilitate understanding and goodwill. So we've got a charge here before us. I think we'll tee that up as a project and begin working on that. Communications plan was almost done as we moved into this area, but I think in talking with the policy group, that one-page memo that distills everything down to 5 or 6 points is what they need in doing their work. So that's something we probably should get going on.
I think that's an excellent idea. We certainly do need to build better bonds and build better rapport with the county. Actually, Steve Dadson and I have been working together. I am co-chair of the Isothermal Legislative Agenda Committee, and we met today with all of the representatives from the counties that are there in order to begin preparing the legislative agenda to be presented to the legislature in January. So some very good things have come out of that, an opportunity to talk with Scott Neisler is co-chairing with me. His great relationship with Mike Moore, both being from the same county. So that's certainly an opportunity for us there. So I think that's going to be very important as we look not to just be an isolated case for trying to address the legislature. In addition to which, I've been appointed to the for the league's legislative policy committee to start to develop their agenda for the legislative policy. So hopefully we'll be able to make some inroads there as we sort of branch out and get some support in our corner. And so I think that this is something that is very necessary if we're going to have enough clout to get some response from the legislature. So I'll let you all know how that goes. Steve and I are meeting constantly, and I'll let you know the updates on that.
And we'll try to pull together those 5 or 6 bullets and refine those internally and get those to you guys as a board to review so that can be communicated out. I think Commissioner DiOrio mentioned this early on. We all need to have the same information. So as we talk with folks who have influence, we're all saying the same thing the exact same way.
Okay, is there more? Do you have more for the town manager communication, or is?
That's it. That's it.
All right, then we'll move on to the council liaison reports and comments. Dr. DiOrio, I'll start with you.
Yes, ma'am. I'll talk. Actually, what I'll do first is I've talked with Patrick. I actually attended the Parks and Rec meeting this month, and it was a very good meeting. And we talked earlier tonight about having lake operations be self-sustaining. The neat thing about this month's Parks and Rec meeting is those folks recognize that they have to conduct Parks and Rec functions within that constraint of being self-sustaining. That was a big deal. They have some ideas of how to raise a little bit of money to help with Parks and Rec. Things like a money box at the trailheads, taking a look at naming rights and perhaps pursuing some funding for those who would want to have things around town named on their behalf. So they're pursuing those things. That's what they focused on. and that would help raise a little bit of money to work within that constraint. The other thing that in general that they're doing is all the things that need to be taken care of day to day, they're doing it with internal resources, right? They're not looking for any external help or taxpayer money to augment what they need to do to maintain Parks and Recreation where they are. And that was tremendous. Things like taking care of the trails with Dana and Dean working together to find volunteers and other resources to go after that. They're doing a great job. They've cleared the trails on several occasions, maintaining more trails that are coming. There's a new trail up on Young's Mountain, a couple other short improvements on the trails coming up. So they are moving forward using internal resourcing without spending a whole lot of money, and that was refreshing. The one thing they're looking at grants for is expanding the parking lot at Buffalo Creek Park. What we've seen this summer is an explosion of use of the trails. And so the parking areas are overwhelmed, particularly that one at Buffalo Creek. So that's something that we can, we have land, the town owns land out there, but to get some, perhaps a grant to expand the parking area, because right now they're parking along Buffalo Creek Road out there, and it gets kind of dangerous. The other thing that they have to take a new look at is the dog park. We've talked about that in the past. The dog park has some noise related to it. You have to have enough land to get this thing done. The previous spots they've looked at, not optimal. And so Dana in particular and Dean are looking at a new location for that dog park, getting a grant to move forward with that. So right now that's kind of on hold. We don't really know where to put that to get the best bang for our buck there. And that was the gist of what's going on with Parks and Rec. I'll move on to the UAB.
Thank you, David, very much.
Is that good, Patrick, with you?
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, that summarizes the meeting notes, and I appreciate your liaison for this month. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yep.
It's all we're all one team, one effort.
Yes,
so
sir.
UAB. So I'll capture lots of things going on with utilities, and so I want to hit the highlights for useful information, particularly for the board. So there's two tracks going on. We've talked about this before. One is the access valve track and everything that's going on with getting the funding and the bids out and the design for that access valve and moving forward. I call that the critical path. It's the tightest schedule that we have, but it is moving on. The next step in that path is the 1st of November, getting word as to the grant for the design. Once we know about that grant, we'll be able to release, and Shannon's all over this, to release monies to Schnabel in order to get the design done so that we can get onto the contracting piece and then the construction. And then the construction piece, to avoid that being stalled, we're actually looking at four different funding paths and in priority order to go after that once we get to the construction phase. And one of those will work. We're going after grants. We can use the SRF money. We could get another independent loan from the general fund if we need to. So all that is being worked in parallel to the sewer system design, which is a whole nother path that's going on. With that path, the UAB is focusing on policy. We gave them 10 questions to look at, and they are moving along with that. We've asked them to really kind of expedite getting a policy recommendation to council so that we can get that approved, because we need that policy statement nailed down and before we send out the letters to all those that would be affected by phase one, or else we risk sending out mixed signals. So the policy thing is the first thing that needs to be done. UAB, I think within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll firm that up to where we could use it, get it to council, and we'll chew on that and get that approved. That'll open the door to get the letter out to the phase one folks, and that's a communication effort. That information needs to get to the mayor because she's going to scrub that for the breeze. Town council will approve it in general and before it even goes out to anybody. And then we'll start collecting data from the property owners that'll flow back into the design a little bit after that. So those two are lockstep with each other. Just so you know, the things that we're talking about with policy are, you know, who's actually going to be involved with phase one. And on that note, there's something worth reporting. We've taken a close look at the mapping in phase one, and we've come to the conclusion that it is much more important to move phase one along the south shore than it is the north shore, and to get all the way to the Lake House Diner and the access to where Ingalls comes down and hooks into the system to ensure that in phase one, those essential services on that side of the lake are included. All right, so that will protect the health services that are up there, our grocery store, the Lake House Diner includes Lurecrest. And so protecting those essential services to the town, I think, but council will get a vote on that, is more important than extending further towards Rumbling Bald to bring residential folks into phase one. So the bottom line is the phase one map is shifting a little bit to Route 9 as opposed to going up the north side past Sunset Cove. But council gets a vote. We'll take a look at that once that's vetted out. It's part of the policy, and we take a look at it. But I introduce that now so you can start thinking about that. The easements, how we're going to do that, tie-in fees, incentives to do tie-in, all that stuff is being considered by the UAB and will come to us. We'll get that nailed down. The letter will go out, and then when people have questions, we're all speaking off the same page. Everyone has applied the same standard for the policy, and we're off and running as a parallel path to Labella designing the system. So all that's going on, and I think that captures pretty much everything with the UAB. I will say outside of the UAB, there's another thing worth mentioning. Good news, really good news. So we got the preliminary data back from the hydro survey, where they needed, the engineers needed, of course, the depth data around where phase one would be. They did a little bit extra because they keep the machines running, you know, just getting out there. And what we found out was, particularly in the middle of the lake, those areas the extra areas that they did just by happenstance to get to the phase one areas show clearly on the bottom where the old pipes are. And so we're taking a look right now, working with Labella to go back to the hydro guys to get more data that we could really use, basically an entire lake survey, which would be really helpful for dredging, particularly on the marina, you know, where the river comes in. Knowing where those pipes are would be a tremendous boost, and other factors that are going on. So the good news there is that the equipment that we had on the lake not only is going to give us depth data that we need to design the sewer system, it's going to tell us where the old pipes are. If we have to go in there for an emergency reason, we'll have that all mapped out. Well worth the investment. That'll come back to council to take a look at if we want to spend a few extra dollars to get that lake survey done. Shannon, did you want to add anything on that point?
No, I think that's a great summary. I would just layer on what you already said, and that's good. Wonderful.
Yep. So a lot of great things happening. Everything's on track. Everything's on time. And the next thing we should hear November 1st, hopefully good news with a grant for the design of the valve. And subject to your questions, that concludes my report from the UAB.
David, if I may add one thing on the article to the Breeze, which was due on October the 10th. I revised that message to be much more, at a much higher level and much broader.
Okay.
Once the letter was not sent out and it was determined that there was going to be a shift in the properties, I certainly did not want to send out any information which might later turn out to be true. So it's just not generic, but it is very broad and from a high perspective on the fact that we're entering into phase one. And so I think that's going to be important as we move forward to make sure that whatever we do send out is in alignment, certainly with what the UAB is doing, with what I send out, but also that we're only sending out actual information, because that's going to be the kiss of death to us if we send out information we later have to go back on. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the worst thing that we can do is prematurely put out information that changes on people.
right.
I think that that would do more harm than anything. So it's really put out enough information that people are informed, that we can answer questions, but not do it prematurely. That's why I think that policy piece really needs to be nailed down before we send out the letter. And we'll get that as soon as we can.
I agree with that. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. We'll move then to Commissioner Kilby. Do you have a report from either the UAB or the, excuse me, the ABC or the LAB?
John, you're muted.
John, if you can hear me, you need to unmute. Commissioner Kilby?
I got you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We got him.
I've got a real bad cough, so I try not to you all to listen to me hack. Neither committee met this past month. I will tell you that the ABC continues to operate as curbside only, as they have been since early COVID. We are trying to get together to be able to have a meeting as soon as possible. We have some issues doing Zoom because everyone's doesn't have the capability to do that. So we're working on that. And as far as the LAB, there was no meeting this month from the LAB. My report.
Thank you very much. Who do we have left here?
Just me, I think. And
Oh, Commissioner Moore, I'm so sorry. I couldn't remember who hadn't spoken. Do you have
That's
a
okay.
report?
The zoning and planning board did not have a meeting this month. Mitchell's continuing to work on the modifications to our zoning ordinances that are required by the new state regulations. But gosh, we've gone for, I guess, about 9 months here with no one bringing any new business before zoning and planning. I hope we get some before all of our committee has to be retrained.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that is all of our boards then. And I know everybody will be happy when we can resume meeting in person, but I'm not sure that we are at a position now to predict what we'll be doing in November.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, Lake
So-
Structures Appeals Board did not meet either.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, we'll move on since our public is not joining us here. We'll skip the public comment, move on to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
Madam Mayor, I have one question. Did we want to go into more detail on the dredging project instead of at least just inform everybody as to what's going on with that before we approve the consent agenda?
Well, I also think there are more items listed in the agenda than there are up here.
Yeah, there may be.
So there you go. That's the entire consent agenda there. And so to your point, yes, we certainly can. And we can move that to, we can certainly move that to unfinished business. Is that what you would like to do?
I think so. I think I'd like to hear from Dean just what the dredging, a little bit more detail on it. It's very contentious. People are confused about it. So I think it's worth just outlining where we are with dredging and where we're going to go. I think would be beneficial. So I move that we move that or get a report from Dean on dredging in unfinished business.
All right, then, do I hear a motion to move, or first of all, before we do that, are there any other items under the consent agenda which someone would like to either edit or move?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of the dredging, which will move to unfinished business.
All
I'll
in
second-
favor?
I'll
Second,
second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion stands approved. Then we will move on then to unfinished business, which will be one item only, which is approval of the 2020-2021 dredging plan. And since you were named in this, Dean, then we'll hear from you.
Okay, thank you very much. Basically, I've just looked at the dredging needs and tried to balance out with the schedules that we have going on this year with the lake going down in January. We also have the project going on of trying to locate sewer lines that may or may not be in the river of the dredge area that we normally dredge at. And to be able to get moving with dredging this year, I've conferred with Kurt Wright, and in your packet, I've produced, there's a couple maps there. That would be the second one. The one below it would be the before. And if you'll notice up to the upper right-hand side there where it's yellow and red, that's going up the little stream behind the Boys Camp Road pit. So that kind of gives you an idea of where this location is in the river. These numbers that you're looking at in the river right now are kind of in the reds being 1 foot, down to the greens being maybe 3 feet to 4 feet. That was before. And then if you go back to the other one, there you go. And the blues are in the 9 and 10 foot range that we have dredged in the past. And my proposal is that we dredge in this same area here where we've been 10 feet before, that we only dredge to a depth of 8 feet to be safe until we locate these pipes. And Kurt Wright has sent in an email that he is in concurrence and agrees with this method. We would work in this area till January until the lake goes down. When the lake goes down, we're going to move out by barge and excavator to the end of the silt shelf and try to make some of that loosen up enough to where the river current will help open that up. Once that lake comes back up to full pond, which you know is a short window, then we'll move back to this area of the lake. But while the lake is down, we have an extensive project that we're going to be trying to locate these sewer lines to make sure that we're safe to dredge in other areas of this river channel.
Are there any questions for Dean?
Dean, I have a question, please.
Yes.
What's the process for locating these things? Are we using some kind of soundings, or do we have a company that's going to be doing that for us?
Yes, I'm working with Kurt and Reese, and we're also got some surveyors coming in. We're going to try to go at this by either soft digging, hard digging. We're also going to be using, when the lake's down, we're going to use ground penetrating radar. And what other methods? Kurt, if he's on here, he could speak to some of the techniques that we plan on using to locate these pipes.
Yeah, I'll just make a few comments here. There are several technologies that could be employed. Some of them are quite expensive. The idea is to use the common sense approach, and this concept that Dean had suggested when the lake's down. In fact, we have a meeting, Dean Givens, myself, and David Airwood tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock to meet with Tim Edwards. And we're going to talk to Tim Edwards about the possibility of doing soft dig or hard dig to locate some pipes that we feel that we can locate. And if we can uncover a pipe in Morris Park, it's right on the edge. we can set a manhole there. If we get an opportunity to set a manhole, that can be an ingress and egress for some of the more expensive tools that we can rent a camera up that can give X, Y, and Z coordinates. But the idea first is, rather than bring down a bunch of expensive equipment and so on, go out there and do hard dig, soft dig where we can, identify and use previous knowledge, and then begin a point base where we connect the dots to identify where the pipes are.
Nice.
Kurt, you did say that you looked at the dredging plan that Dean proposed, or it was modified based on your assessment of previous dredge operations?
Yes, I met with him and saw the documents he just presented to you, and I approve it.
So basically, we're dredging where we know the pipes are not until we find out where the pipes really are, and we're safe.
That's correct, and you're also not going down as far as they went in the past.
Right.
Any other questions for Dean or discussion? In that case, do I hear a motion to approve the 2021 dredging plan?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the 2020-2021 Lake Lure dredging plan.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And by unanimous decision, we've approved the 2021 dredging plan. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Under new business, we have no new business. So our next item would be a closed session. Do I hear a motion to go into closed session?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we go into closed session in accordance with, one second, let me pull them up. In accordance with GS 143-318-11, A3 for the attorney-client privilege or legal claims, with GS 143-318.11, A6 for the purpose of discussing personnel matters.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then we will go into closed session. To that point, do I hear a motion to adjourn? We have no other items on our agenda past this closed session in our open session. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Do I hear a
second that. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.